If you've been on the internet lately, you've probably seen that the NFL is trending right now, and it may not be for a good reason that they are trending. Recently, the NFL has now come to a conclusion in regards to several different rule changes that will be taking place in next season's NFL. We are going to talk about that and just the utter craziness to some of these rules and where we stand and kind of how things are going to really play out there. We're also going to talk about, well, the Sweet 16, which is another hot topic that is happening on the internet. No, I'm not talking about a birthday party, but I am talking about a celebration of several teams that will be going on to the next round where the others will be going home early. And no, it's not your birthday. You can't cry if you want to. And lastly, talk about this Shohei Ohtani news. Yes, we know he is the richest baseball player alive, but there seems to be a lot of drama that is happening around him. We're going to take a deep dive into that. But first, I am your host, Matthew Raridan, and this is Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. What's going on, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. And guys, we've missed you guys all, but we've also missed our very own Ed Smith here, who, although is still out on vacation, he is gracing us and blessing us with his presence today. But first, I want to introduce David Street.
What's up, y'all?
And yes, I've already mentioned his name, but welcome back. And what's going on, Ed Smith?
Welcome, y'all.
Yes, and although Ed's been out on vacation, hopefully having a good time. He did see his Longhorns go down against Tennessee, and I'm sure he's hearing who's the real UT right now, but it's a topic for a different day. But there has definitely been a lot happening and circulating right now since we've talked last, and that is the new NFL rule changes. And guys, this is pretty much all that is being talked about online right now, minus anything political, bridges kind of crashing, everyday stuff. But this NFL rules change is quite the story. It's the topic of discussion right now, and I want to start actually with the very first rule. Well, not the first rule that was implemented, but one of the first rules here, and that is the kickoff rules. And this it's going to be completely different. Your kickoff that you remember is gone. It's bye-bye. We know that the NFL is slowly but surely been trying to get rid of the kickoffs. They don't want concussions, they don't want contact, and we're going to talk more about contact here in a bit. But here it is where we're seeing a completely different looking kickoff situation here. David, first before we dive into this, uh, it how do you feel about this rule change, and is it gonna feel weird as an NFL fan or a football fan?
Well, I think it's going to feel weird because we're going to see something different. But how do I feel about this particular rule change? I'll be honest with you, Matthew. I really don't care because rules change all of the time. They don't change. They change pretty much every year, every other year, and that's just how I look at it. It doesn't. Um, yeah, I don't care at all.
Yeah, so this particular rule, which I'm going to talk about now, there's already been a blueprint for it because it was, if I remember correctly, it was already in the XFL, where you have 10 versus 10 from the opposing 40 and 30-yard line. And nobody is allowed to move until the ball is actually fielded. And it's It's really gonna look funky. I wish I had a video or a graphic to post for you, but if you look it up, you will see it. If you look up an XFL game, you will see it as well. But they have certain restrictions on where the ball can go. As we already know now in our current rules, if you kick the ball out of bounds before it reaches the end zone, that's a flag and it goes to the 40-yard line automatically. So we've already seen something similar to like that. But this right here is going to be a little different. The ball has to land inside the 20-yard line. It could go past the end zone, which most kicks do regardless now, and that's going to be a touchback. With the ball is going to be on the 35-yard line, if that's correct. Does that sound correct to you, Ed?
It's the 30.
Yeah, 30. Okay. And then it's also going to eliminate onside kicks. So we've seen surprise onside kicks. Shoot, do you remember the Super Bowl, the Saints, the Colts? Right after halftime, Sean Payton with one of the gutsiest moves of all time, a surprise onside kick to start the second half. Well, guess what? That's not going to be able to happen anymore. Onside kick cannot happen unless it's in the fourth quarter, and you cannot surprise do it. You have to acknowledge that you're doing an onside kick. You have to let the other team know. Therefore, it's not a surprise anymore. And you also have to be down within the game. So usually you are the opponent that is down in the game when you do an onside kick, but uh, you could be tied and do an surprise onside kick. Well, not anymore. You can't. And I get why they're doing this. They still want excitement in the kickoff, but they want more on the safety side. That's why they're doing this. They're trying to meet in the middle. So I could get that. I could support that. But a question I want to ask you, Ed, and you'll be a little bit more particular with this because of the player. But if rules like this were in place, would Devin Hester be a Hall of Famer? This is what I think of when I hear rules like this being changed, because personally, there would be no Devin Hester if the NFL continues to do these rule changes. So how do you feel about that, Ed?
There would be no Devin Hester, but the rules committee several years ago moved the kickoff forward another 5 yards to make sure that more than half of the kickoffs that were happening were touchbacks, and it was eliminating the kickoff altogether. In fact, the stat that came out was only 27% of kicks that were done last year were actually returned. So essentially, over time, you've seen the NFL try and be safer by moving the kickoff forward so there's less touchbacks, but get mad that there is less touchbacks, less returns, because that's an exciting part of the game. I'm perfectly okay with this particular rule as as an experiment, a way to try and bring a play into a kickoff situation. There's just things that you have to let go in the middle of it, and the onside kick is part of it. The kick returns are part of it. Not only Devin Hester, but you had your Dante Halls. You had your Eric Metcalfs. You had a lot of these guys that they made their living. Darren Sproles. They made their NFL careers on being return men. Well, it's not the same kind of return anymore. This is indeed a play that is going to have to be schemed by a special teams coach. This is not a return, a wedge, a reverse, anything like that. This is a true play that is going to have to take place, or the kicking team is going to have to bear the consequences of either letting the other team start at the 30, or if it goes out of bounds before it gets to the end zone, starting at the 40 like the rule has been already.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that was also kind of more of my point, is that the NFL has been doing rules like this already now by trying to eliminate kickoffs for player safety. And so, yeah, by moving it forward, it was already taking kick returns away from the game. Hence why I did bring up Devin Hester, who also did do punt returns, yes, but no one can forget his return in the Super Bowl to start the Super Bowl. I mean, it was
Mhm.
truly incredible and really made a name for himself like that. But you're not going to see that anymore. The Jacoby Jones, the only way Jacoby Jones is known for is one, he also did one in the Super Bowl, and two, Mike Tomlin helped made him famous too. But that's a little different. But these kickoffs, it's going to be a little different. And the onside kicks, some people may not like them. I actually really like the onside kicks, but it was pretty much eliminated once they made the rule where players couldn't run before the kick was placed. So they now it's almost impossible to get an onside kick, which it was pretty hard before, but there was still a chance. Now those chances for the most part are gone. But yeah, like Ed said, you kind of have to let go of something, and that is really what it is.
Yeah, I gotta.
And go ahead, David.
Yeah, I gotta be honest. When I saw the new kickoff rule, my first thought was I kind of thought this was already a rule. Even though yes, there was obviously that one probably the most famous onside kick in NFL history that Sean Payton pulled off in the Super Bowl.
Well, I would beg to differ on most famous, maybe most notorious for the Packers, but that was 2014 NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
Uh, what what you have seen with these rules to make things safer on the onside kick portion of it, they've completely eliminated it because it has gone down from a 22% proposition to an 18% proposition. Now it's all the way down to like a 3% proposition. It's just not worth the hassle of creating a hands team or a go get it team in special teams. So you've got to they've got to let go of that portion of it. Although to me, the onside kick was one of the more exciting things that can happen at the end of a ball game, just to see if there's still you're saying there's a chance. Well, that's what the onside kick was all about, and they've taken that away with this rule change.
Yeah, I always felt like the onside kick, yes, it gave that team just a little bit of extra chance. That team that didn't have any timeouts or anything like that, it just gave them that slight hope. And when it comes down to it, and it's your team, you want that slight hope just for anything. And so that's kind of not going to be a thing anymore. But
And
uh,
one more thing,
yeah.
if I could, uh, as far as the NFL adopting the XFL's rules, the XFL actually had an onside kick rule where you had to declare, but it was actually like a 4th and 20 that you had to convert to get the ball back. And that was at least an idea that was floated around at NFL offices, but I don't know why they would just drop back to this particular idea if they're going to go full bore with this whole changing of the kickoff system altogether.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Ed, because the rumors that I'm hearing that happened when that rule got brought up, all NFL teams were against it except for one, and that was the Chiefs because they knew with Mahomes they'd be able to get it every time. But and so the other teams were like, that's not fair. This is going to be the Mahomes rule all of a sudden. But that's
Mhm.
obviously not a real source, guys. I just wanted to joke about that because I don't care. That ball's 4th and 40. If Mahomes has the ball, my
So
money's on him. I'm all in.
yeah, like when it comes to the these changes to kickoffs and whatnot. I mean, I'm not against the idea of there being changes at all. But I just hate the idea that supposedly the NFL is doing this for safety, because if they're doing this for safety, then like why not just turn the NFL into flag football? And that's pretty much a harbinger of what we're going to talk about real soon. But then again, it's like you can't get rid of offense, and you obviously can't get rid of defense. So you're just going with the next best thing, trying to alter special teams. That's how I look at it, at least.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, David. I find it to be they are litigating the the danger out of the game, and the danger of the game is part of why we love it so much.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
and why the players will also play it too. You ask any NFL player, they're not gonna go in there saying that, I play football so I don't get touched," or you know what I mean? Like, they know the game. They grew up watching the game. If they watched any Ronnie Lott plays, they would be gritting their teeth, and they would be ready to go hit someone, but now it's, "Well, where's the bubble wrap aisle?" Because that's where we're heading down, and that's a perfect uh, point to turn this over, David, is flag football. When this next rule that we're about to talk about was official, JJ Watt, who is an amazing football player that was an NFL likely Hall of Famer, tweeted out saying, "Well, we might as well start upgrading to the belts with flags on them." Well, because that's where we are heading, and yes, I am talking about the hip drop or the hit drop tackle rule that has now been official. It's been voted for player safety. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's tackle football is what I'm talking about. It's almost every tackle that you
Yeah.
see on a Sunday is now going to be a penalty. And I am I I'm not the youngest, but I'm not the oldest. I remember playing football in high school, and almost every single way coaches taught you how to tackle when I was back in high school is now illegal in the NFL, this being one of them. And it really makes it hard to want to play defense in the NFL.
Mhm.
It's already been tough as is. I don't know if you guys have seen the Buffalo Wild Wing commercials with Sauce
But
Gardner on them,
oh, okay, yeah.
and where the big old Buffalo's asking, well, what's a tackle? What's a penalty or whatever? And everything that he's saying, is that a tackle? Is that a tackle? Sauce Gardner is like, that's a penalty. That's a penalty. That's a penalty. And it's so funny because it's subtle yet obvious that it is such a soft bush league right now in the NFL that couldn't even tell you what tackle will be legal now.
There was a tweet that someone posted, and I just died of laughter. And it showed a picture of Dwayne the Rock Johnson with his hand out like this, with the caption, "This is how the NFL wants players to tackle now."
Yeah, it's two-hand touch, one-hand touch, flag football, you name it. Because listen, in the last several years, these are the rules that have been implemented that will be a 15-yard penalty, automatic first down, and a possible fine. And that is landing on a quarterback with your weight, because the laws of physics and gravity, they don't matter towards you. When you go to land on a quarterback, you are expected to defy the law of gravity and physics to not get a penalty. No touching a receiver really in their route. Uh, as we know, football is a physical game. I'm not saying holding a receiver, but I'm talking about you can't make any contact whatsoever. No horse collar tackles. No hitting a player outside of the designated strike zone, which is actually probably smaller than an MLB strike zone now. You're probably talking about this much. No launching to meet the force of an offensive player. It's just
Derrick Henry.
yes, there is the list continues to go on and on and on. I mean, the window to tackle a quarterback now is insanely small. You're not even allowed to touch a quarterback's helmet. Even if hit here without even grabbing it, you are not allowed to touch a quarterback's helmet without it being a 15-yard penalty. Uh it is very soft. I get that the NFL is, or sorry, the quarterback is the star player of the team and ratings and all that, but it's just not fair anymore to play on defense, because you let alone breathe too hard on the quarterback, you're going to get penalized. And yes,
Hell, if you think about bringing the quarterback down, you're probably going to get penalized for that.
yeah. And I get there is some malicious acts that have happened towards quarterbacks out there. There really has. every week, I hate to even say this, but every time this my Steelers play Tom Brady, I'm like, please, just someone lay him out. I don't care, just get him out of the game because he always beat us, and everyone in the NFL hated Tom Brady. They couldn't stand him because he won. That's
Mhm.
reason number one. That's majority. He was a winner. Um, Cocky, arrogant. Just could not stand the guy. Did his same routine every game where he goes and slams his fist, go gets his water from the guy, and it's like, all right,
I hated
guy.
I hated I hated Brady too until he came into my team.
I exactly. I feel the exact same way. So yes, there is ill will out there. There are times where there are quarterbacks where any defensive player would love to just wrap them up and slam them to the ground. But Tom Brady was a phenomenal quarterback, but his injuries did create a lot of these rules. I mean, you can't even tackle from the waist down on a quarterback anymore. You can't tackle anywhere pretty much from the chest up, obviously. So your window is so small, and it's really taken away from the game. A hip drop tackle is a very common tackle, and yes, there were some injuries this last year, but guess what? There's injuries every year in football. We're not, there's injuries playing on turf. They taken away turf? No, but you do a hip drop tackle and there's an injury. Guess what? We're taking that away real quick. So it's just, I don't really understand the route that they're going. But to me, as a football fan, the only route I could think of is we're going to be like the Pro Bowl in 5 years, where it's going to be flag football all around, just like the Olympics.
I think what they're really trying to move away from is the defender landing on the back of the legs of the offensive player because that is what's been creating the issues. And the example that they keep going back to is the Tony Pollard hit that happened this past season, where playing against the Niners, Tony Pollard was rolled up on with one of these drop hip tackles, and it created an injury. So now, with the way that the NFL is, it's very reactionary in this sense that one person gets hurt, everybody has to change how they do things to make sure that nobody else gets hurt. And that's not how you play football. That is not the game that we all grew up knowing and loving and playing.
No, I mean, we saw it with Tony Pollard, Mark Andrews this year. Like I said, there were injuries of why the rule is now in place. It was mainly based off of those, and I've heard several people bring up great points that almost every defensive lineman tackles that way. And if you were to take off, just a percent of your body weight that you're throwing into that tackle, you're going to end up possibly missing that tackle or somehow, flipping this runner around, and then it'll be a penalty because you slammed him to the ground. Ed earlier joked about Derrick Henry, and it's like you think of someone his size. Tell me how you're going to tackle him without it being a penalty now. And it's kind of hard to do. That guy is a monster out there, and tackling him's already hard enough.
I think
Right.
we're moving closer and closer to the reality of a sarcastic ball. If anybody knows what I'm referencing.
Well, to kind of give a historical reference on this whole deal, the Super Bowl with the Rams and the Titans, that 1 yard short, guess what? That was the drop hip tackle.
Hmm.
That is what won the Rams the Super Bowl. Are you now going to give the Titans a Super Bowl trophy because that play is now illegal? No, but I think that's a rather absurd idea. But that's that same kind of play would have given in today's game now the Titans another opportunity to win that game. And I would hate to have the championship of NFL football this year rest on the laurels of, oh, well, to keep him from getting into the end zone, it was a drop hip tackle, with 2 seconds left and no timeouts. But guess what? There was a flag on the play. You get another shot at it, and it's a it's a win. I I don't like the officials being that involved with the final outcome of the game, and I just see it happening where the end of this season is going to be determined by a rule like this made to feel safer rather than actually letting the players play.
Yeah, and there's a lot of other rules that did pass in addition to these. These were just the 2 more controversial ones. But I mean, there were some rule changes that I feel like were really for the good. I mean, there was the one where at after 2 minutes, they'll also be reviewing upstairs for penalties that were called, stuff like that to kind of make it
Hmm.
to where you're not sitting there blaming the refs for losing the game because, well, at that point it'll be looked at again with extra set of eyes that hopefully will make the correct call because as we know when 2 minutes is coming down it's very crucial, and you want everything to be 100%, and well now they want to now kind of have that, and then we have the new challenge rule where you win one of your first 2 challenges, you are automatically rewarded with a third one. Where the original rule was you had to win both of them to then be rewarded with that. So now you just win one of them, you get a third one in the game.
So, real quick on that one, at what point are we trying to be too correct when it comes to stuff like this? Human error is part of the game, and to to challenge up to 3 times on both sides to try and fix a human error when things are happening, faster than fast, quicker than quick. Are we getting too fine a point on making sure that it's right versus, making the game exciting and for the fans?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Ed, because this is how I interpreted how this came to light was for years NFL, the teams have the franchises have been pushing for the NFL to make officials full time. And I think this kind of is these rules that I just these last 2 that I just talked about are the teams pretty much saying, "If you aren't going to make them full-time, you need to make these rules happen then," because we are getting tired of these calls that are happening with the refs. And yes, they are only human, I will say that. But the NF like I said, these teams have been pushing for the refs to be full-time employees, and they aren't. They're only part-time for when it's, in season, and it something needed to give, and so that's why I see why these rules pretty much passed or they came to light. So that's how I feel, Ed.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get that. But if we're looking for officiating things to help, how about we get, I don't know, trackers in the balls to make sure that they're aligned properly with where the ball was supposed to be placed, rather than this archaic chain that is 10 yards in length, where every other sport has the capability of getting a spot down to a millimeter of where it's supposed to be. But yet we are relying on Joe Schmo that has a court date with whoever he's working with during Monday through Friday to come out here and line up a chain. I don't. Why can't we get that fixed?
Don't forget the index cards, okay? That was really important. But yeah, I in the NFL season, almost every commercial break, I will always see a commercial where you see the catch probability. It was an 11% catch probability by Tyler Lockett in the back of the end zone. We have technology that can calculate that, but we don't have technology that could calculate the correct first down. We're going to use the chain gang like how land was measured back in the day, chain links. So it's like it's just crazy that here we are archaic when it comes to that, but everything else, we there's a number, there's a stat for it. So yeah, I get what you're saying though, Ed. I really do. But um on to the next topic, and this is obviously another big topic right now this time of the year, and that's men's college basketball, March Madness, and the Sweet 16 is officially set, and it is going to take place tomorrow, which is Thursday. And I'm just going to read off the games really quick, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about the rest of the tournament. So in the Sweet 16, we've got the number 1 seed UConn versus San Diego State. We've got Illinois versus Iowa State, North Carolina Tar Heels versus Alabama, Clemson and Arizona. Then we've got Houston and Duke, North Carolina State and Marquette, Purdue and Gonzaga, and lastly Creighton and Tennessee. And just reading that off, I am so anxious and pumped for a lot of these matchups because they are so close to call. Yeah, the UConn San Diego State, I feel like UConn is going to take that one, but the Illinois and Iowa State game, I've had that game circled my entire bracket because I don't know who I could pick when it came to that. I knew it was gonna come down to those 2 at one point, but Illinois and Iowa State is a phenomenal game, and, Purdue and Gonzaga, also a great game, and Creighton and Tennessee, another great game there. I'm really excited when it comes to these marquee matchups here because anything can happen. You look at it, you're like, "Alright, UConn's probably gonna win this here. Houston's probably gonna win that there." The way Arizona's playing right now, they should have a pretty easy path, but when it comes to these other games, it is a toss-up. It really is. Illinois and Iowa State, they're playing some of their best basketball, all year now, and this is when you need to play your best basketball. So when you have 2 teams like that are at their very best, their peak, who knows what will happen. And Gonzaga, guys, Gonzaga is not being talked about, and that's why they're winning. So if you're a Gonzaga fan, you go in the comments, you tell me to shut up. I'll stop talking about them just for your sake because it seems like when Gonzaga's talked about, they lose. So this year could be the anomaly where they aren't being talked about. But guys, Purdue, although they're a 1 seed, they are also one of those teams that are not being talked about. They're also in the conversation of are they going to be the 1 seed that loses first? Well, Zach Edey says otherwise, and they are looking great now in this tournament. It seemed like at one point they were kind of falling off. They did not win their conference championship, and here they are in the tournament looking like a true number 1 seed. But that begs me to ask this next question to you guys: who's going to be the first number 1 seed to fall? Of course, talks have been talking about Purdue. You've got Houston, UConn, and North Carolina. I feel like if I ask David this question, his answer is going to be North Carolina. Let's see if I'm right.
Well, I do think Purdue is going to fall, but this is going to shock you guys. I think UConn's going to get upset by San Diego State. I really do, because I believe that Brian Dutcher, the head coach of the Aztecs, is in that locker room reminding his guys of the pain of getting destroyed in the championship last year. Like I understand it's a new season and all that, but if you don't think that he's if you don't think he's motivating his players, then I don't know what to tell you. You know, he probably makes his players watch replays for almost every other day, and I think that motivation, that drive, that revenge, that sort of hunger is going to fuel San Diego State, and I really believe that UConn is going to go down.
Yeah, I mean, it's only fitting that these 2 teams are facing off already, considering the Cinderella run last year by
Hmm.
San Diego State meeting UConn in the championship, and it wasn't much of a game. But San Diego State is out to prove something. If you've watched any of their games, you could tell that San Diego State, they want to show that last year was not a fluke. And so far, they're showing. I get that they beat Yale, Northwestern, but San Diego, I mean, sorry, UAB, they are really, looking really good right now. But so, David, you have Purdue or UConn possibly losing first. Ed, I
Yeah.
mean, you have anything that you want to add towards that on a number 1 seed?
Well, I will say that I still have three of my final four still in play.
Yeah.
So that's I'm happy about that part with the way last weekend went. Ooh, that
Yeah.
was rough.
Yeah.
But I will say that uh, I'm in agreement with David here. I think UConn is going to lose to San Diego State, and for the exact same reasons. We're on the same page here. The other part of it is Iowa State is the absolute best team that's not being talked about. You're saying Gonzaga's not being talked about, so they're going to go further. Iowa State, who even knows who these guys are? But yet they have taken the overall number 2 seed, Houston, and beat the tar out of them in the Big 12 championship game. So that is a scary team, in my opinion. As far as the first number one to drop, UConn, Purdue, I think will fall to Tennessee. I think they'll get through Gonzaga. Those old guards are actually helping Zach Edey from what I've seen, uh, whereas last year they did not. So that's why they've been able to make a run into this weekend this year versus what they did last year. Arizona and North Carolina, I think they're on a collision course at this point. I still have Carolina going through, and I think the maybe the toughest route to get there might be Houston, having to go through Duke. They're going to have to go through Marquette because NC State's a great story. I've watched that tournament, that ACC tournament that they went through and won, but I don't think they're going to make it another game. But I've said that for the past 4 games they've played. So here they are. I think Houston has the toughest road into the Final Four, but that's where I'm at right now. I've got Iowa State, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Houston making it to the next weekend.
Yeah, I could see why you both will choose UConn possibly as being the first one seed to fall, even though they're the number one overall seed. Is well, being back to back defending champs is kind of hard to do in this tournament, and the last
Yeah,
one being
tell me about it.
David's Florida Gators. Hence why he probably that's why he wants UConn to lose. Yeah, the Gators are the last team to win it back to back, and that was in 06-07. It is a feat that is really hard to do. So UConn, they have quite a road ahead of them to do that, and one could argue they may have one of the toughest ones too, facing a San Diego State team that is hungry for redemption, and then having to face a potential Iowa State, Illinois team, which are very equally talented. It's going to be a tough one for UConn. Same with Purdue, Gonzaga, and then having to face off against Tennessee or Creighton. It's not an easy task, but I just am naturally curious. Could it possibly be number 1 and number 2 seeds going to the Elite 8 all around? Because it's still in play. No 1 seed or 2 seed has been upset yet. So, what are the chances of it being all 1 and 2 seeds after this weekend?
David,
What about you, Ed?
I'm certainly going to say that it's about a 60-40 proposition for me that it's the 1 and 2 seeds going into the Elite Eight before you get into uh, that final weekend uh, for all the bragging rights, because this has been one of the most scratch tournaments I've seen in a very long time. There's so much parity in the regular season of college basketball. I'm just not seeing it when it gets down to tournament time. There is a clear separation between who the best teams are and who's happy to be there.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's always those teams that, gosh, all they just want to do is play upset. Is we're just happy to be here, and hey, if we upset you, we upset you. I mean, look at Yale. Look at what they did to Auburn, who, although came in as a 4 seed, they were regarded as probably one of the best overall teams in the country. And well, Yale, who barely got in, they upset them. So there's always that team that it's the deck of cards is there. But you talked about last week and just the craziness that happened, that transpired there, and one of them being Kentucky, being one of the biggest losers this last weekend. Well, word is Coach John Calipari is going to still have his job. He's going to be safe. He is being retained at Kentucky, and you can see Ed's reaction right there. David, do you agree with this, motion by Kentucky to keep Calipari where he is at?
Well, it really depends on how you look at it, right? Because are you trying to win championships? Then Kentucky bringing back John Calipari was the wrong decision. But here's the issue, guys. Here's the thing, all right? Kentucky isn't trying to win championships anymore. Or I'm not. What I'm trying to say is that they're more focused on sending players to the NBA, and that's exactly what John Calipari does. And because John Calipari is very good at sending players to the NBA, they're not going to get rid of him. That and the fact that he has a lifetime contract. But my point still stands.
Yeah, they're like, just don't sue us. So just
Yeah,
keep being our coach. All
yeah,
right, how about that?
yeah.
Well, it's my thought that Calipari should just be a recruiter because, man, can the guy recruit? He's been a great recruiter for years, and we've gotten past the one and done era of college basketball. So that recruiting is great, but it's not great enough to make it through a tournament with nothing but freshmen and sophomore year after year after year. This tournament requires some resolve that you only get by playing together for multiple years, being part of that program, and the transfer portal is not helping either. So Calipari being a recruiter, he is top notch. If that's what you want, if you want to win recruitment season to get all the accolades of what that brings you, all the national exposure, all the TV games, all of everything that goes with that, then sure, Calipari's your guy. But when you're talking about end game strategizing, he's not it. He is he relies on the athleticism of the recruits that he's brought in way more than his actual ability to manage the floor and manage the plays on the floor. And for that reason, this is the wrong move for Kentucky. But they're kind of stuck if they do not want to pay him that buyout that is in that lifetime contract to just let him go away. So he and Jimbo Fisher can go sit on an island somewhere drinking Mai Tais.
Yeah, yeah. It kind of reminds me of like Billy Donovan when he was the Thunder coach, just with the talent, but just did not know how to really coach that team or to be kind of manage that court as well. Billy Donovan being the great coach who was the last Florida Gators coach to win back to back national champions.
The
But
only one, but
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, sorry. He was the last coach to do it right now in
Oh, overall.
college.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
Coach
got
K
you.
being before him with Duke,
Yeah, yeah.
um, but yeah, so yeah, definitely on some island somewhere. I'm sure Cliff Kingsbury will join them and from Thailand. But s there is another big topic that needs to be talked about, and it is being talked about everywhere, and we need to hire Inspector Jacques Clouseau to really solve this one. He's probably the only one I have faith in to solve this, and that is Shohei Ohtani and everything that's happening with him from the interpreter, gambling, the gambling debts, the fraud, the whatever it may be. He had a press conference yesterday where, this is his quote here of, I have never bet on baseball or any other sport and have never asked anybody to do it on my behalf. That is what Shohei Ohtani said uh, through an interpreter, um, of of that he's not gambling, he's not doing this because, of course, a lot of signs are pointing kind of towards him with this situation. It is a very weird and odd situation that has now become because yes, everyone's thinking, well, surely Otani was in on this, right? It was from his bank account. Of course, there is always three sides to a story, and they're trying to gather all the information they can. And the newest part of it is, well, his team has said, well, once we found out that the money was missing, we did turn this over to the authorities to take over this and to figure out what happened. And when the media has contacted the authorities, none of them have been contacted by Otani's team to investigate the matter. So the plot thickens because, well, what exactly is really happening? What is the truth in all of this? And, well, Ed, what did manager Dave Roberts actually say about Otani, though, now that his interpreter is no longer there?
Uh, so just to clear up something from a moment ago, Otani actually answered that question directly after being asked in English. He answered the question in Japanese for the interpreter to say to the press,
Yeah,
as a, because Otani does understand some most English, but he's just not comfortable speaking it in a press conference format.
yeah,
So just to be clear on that portion of it, but as Dave Roberts was being asked about this, one of the he said that one of the things that was really great that can come of this is the fact that Otani up to this point has been very insulated with Matsuhura, meaning that whatever he was doing across town in Anaheim, he just showed up and he just balled out. There was nothing about being part of the team, being part of the other 25 guys in the locker room. It was just those two guys, and they came and went, they trained, and that was the whole deal. Well, now with this, the Dodgers have a culture in which that can that can actually absorb Otani and make him part of the team as a whole, as opposed to letting him just be some entity that shows up and plays. He can be part of what the other guys on the team are part of as far as a full team concept, not just a collection of stars, which is, let's be honest, the Dodgers are a collection of stars, but to have those stars become aligned as a single unit, that is what they're hoping for to get them over the hump.
yeah. I think there are two factors here. That one, that's probably why the Angels did not win. They did not have that fun, upbeat locker room atmosphere. And two, this interpreter kind of held Otani back, it sounds like, because Otani just seems like a completely different person now that one, this guy's gone, and two, he's on a different team that has an upbeat culture. Any team that has a Kike Hernandez is going to be upbeat and having the time of their life. Even though I'm a Giants fan, I love Kike Hernandez. I think every team needs a Kike Hernandez on their team because they bring that funk, that something that a team really needs to be more upbeat and successful. And the Dodgers, it's contagious there. You see Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman really kind of break out of whatever, they weren't necessarily in a shell, but they are having the time of their lives too down there. They're like kids again. So there is something that is happening that in a good way down there for the Dodgers. It's just they still need to win a World Series. And so I know they
Yeah.
all want that. That is their goal, but I think they
Well,
have a great path ahead of them.
listen, like when it comes to this whole mess with Otani, I don't know if Otani is telling the truth. I don't know if he's just covering his ass. I really don't know. But again, it begs the question, why in the world did somebody who's not your spouse, doesn't work at your bank, why did that person have access to your bank account? Okay, I don't care if he's your best friend, and I don't know if they were best friends or not. I don't care if you guys were close. Okay, he is not a member of your family. He should not have had access to your bank account. So I just want to know, how in the world was that even a thing?
His whole job was to be paid to be his best friend, to take away every single non baseball related issue away from Otani so he could only focus on being the best ball player in baseball right now.
Hmm.
So that means being his driver. That means being his butler. That means being his bellman. That means getting his laundry. That means handling all of his personal issues, all of his banking issues, all of his business issues, everything. Just getting it all out of the way so Otani can focus on what he came to the States for. And and he was paid handsomely to do it. Now with what has occurred, that is something that Otani did not foresee when he kind of made that decision to allow uh, Mitsuhara to have that kind of access to every bit of his life outside of baseball.
Yeah, and I don't know the truth, and I'm not gonna sit here and point fingers at the blame game or anything like that, but what I'm gathering and kind of the story that is being built up right now is this guy was kinda bad news. He kinda had, like, that black cloud over Otani where he did control a lot of him, and we are seeing that with the money being taken and also uh, how much Otani has now opened up and is more happier now that he's gone. So if
Mhm.
that's really what happened, you could kind of clearly see that well, this guy really wasn't he wasn't bad news because now things look to be better now that he's gone and maybe he just caused a whole lot of trouble. So that could very well be exactly what happened.
And it begs the question, how well did the Angels vet this guy to allow him in the locker room for the Angels?
Yeah.
That's
They
a
probably
major issue.
like let's be honest, they probably didn't care because they finally have a who's not only a star, but he's also a very marketable star because and I understand that the Angels they also have Mike Trout, but as amazing as Mike Trout is, he doesn't have nearly the amount of marketing power that Shohei does.
Well, in all honesty, I think what happened is he showed up to the Angels organization, handed them a white piece of paper. They open it up and it says, "I speak Japanese. Here's a $10 bill," and it seems legit to me. So that's how
To
I
me,
saw it.
he seems like the guy in Office Space that's the next door neighbor that can hear everything through the wall. He's like, "Hey, I won't tell anybody either." You
Yeah,
know, oh, don't worry about him. He's cool.
yeah, he's
It's
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kinda how I'm gathering it too. So the Angels, yes, they happen to have 2 of the greatest baseball players of all time on their team at the same time, but, they are not a good franchise, and this clearly is kinda showing that in addition, that they may not have even vetted this guy, and, he coulda just made Otani's life a living hell. So, I would hate for that to be the truth, but maybe this is what needed to happen, and shoot, if Otani gets even better than what he's already been, wow. This guy is gonna go down as all-time greatest, so who knows if this guy really held him back that much.
And one of the things I've found with the Dodgers and that culture that they've built over there is the fact that they do have their own interpreters that are vetted by the club to use for the club. So that way the players can take care of what they need to take care of. But when they are on Dodger time, they are completely on Dodger time and they don't have to worry about it. Will Ireton is their interpreter in house, and he started with Kenta Maeda.
Mhm.
So he's moving on from that to work with Otani and also Yamamoto as they are all becoming the single unit, which it's going to take some time for that team to really become as close as they need to be to make it through the season. The trip over to Korea, that was kind of an anomaly thing. I do expect to see some kind of closeness, some bonding from having to take that trip over there. But we'll see how the rest of the season goes. I, as as they all kind of swirl around each other more so than individual collection of players.
I remember at one time the Dodgers, they had so many interpreters just on one team because you had Kenta Maeda, you had, Hyun-jin Ryu, you had, Puig. There were they there was like their whole team at one point required translators, and of course, they're all from different countries, so it was different languages, but,
and,
yeah.
and I go back to Chan Ho Park and
Uh-huh.
uh, Tatis, and
Yeah.
you know, there was a whole slew of players that needed that kind of attention, and the Dodgers are a franchise that can afford it.
Absolutely, they can, and, it's been working out well for them when it comes to these players, but, yeah, I wanna see how Yamamoto does, and, but I wanna see how this story continues to get out there, there is a truth somewhere. And if Otani just clearly was the victim, yeah, you have to feel bad for him. But uh, he'll be a billionaire here soon enough with all these deferred payments, and he'll move elsewhere so the taxes don't hurt him too much. But he'll be just fine when it comes to the money situation. But nonetheless, you don't ever want to be taken advantage of. But with that being said, that's about all we have today, folks. You could hit that like, that subscribe button, share these videos. Also, if you could drop some comments in the comment section of your thoughts, your opinions on the Otani situation, these NFL rules, because we do know that there are some that are absurd, some that are great. And do you feel like it could be, close to flag football someday? I'll be interested to hear what you guys have to say, but we'll only know that if you do drop those in the comment section, guys. So we appreciate all that you guys do. Just continue to support us, guys, and we will give you our very best. But until next time, we are round in third and we are headed for home.